Tornado Cash, the Ethereum mixer. So yeah, just for background, Tornado Cash is like a popular tool. It's essentially a set of smart contracts that lets you deposit funds, ETH, and other like ERC20 tokens, and then you can withdraw them from another address. It makes it quite easy to cover your tracks because obviously the sort of public nature of blockchains, everything is sort of recorded, so it's quite easy to trade things if you have the right tools. But with this, it gets a lot harder. It's very popular, but because it's a privacy preserving tool, it's also quite popular with the kinds of people who engage in, I guess, criminal activity and stuff like DeFi hacks. So attacks like the Ronin Bridge hack that was worth $500 million, they used Tornado to siphon off a big portion of the funds. And usually when one of these attacks happens, the criminals go through Tornado very quickly after, sometimes within hours. And this was kind of what the Treasury led with in their statement, was talking about how it's used as a tool for money laundering. They put a fairly questionable section in the press release about it, which basically said, it quoted the total volume that is seen, which is like $7 billion, I think, and it said that it was it's laundered $7 billion has been laundered through it. So they was kind of saying that anyone who's used Tornado Cash is money laundering, which kind of had me raising my eyebrows when I read that. But yeah, they very much led with this whole narrative around the crime aspect. It mentioned DPRK, and Lazarus Group, and there was even a member of Biden's office that put out this tweet that initially said that Tornado was owned by DPRK, or that they were kind of working with them, but then he ended up deleting it. But nonetheless, it was very much angled this way. No mention of Russia, but yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised by that either, given the tone. And yeah, it was obviously, this is massive news. I guess the important thing here is that there's not just like a series of addresses that they blocked. Usually when sanctions have worked in crypto in the past, it's been like this address referring to an address that belongs to someone. But this was like the related addresses for Tornado and its smart contracts. So it's like a block on code, right? And to people in crypto, blocking that, it's as if you're blocking free speech, because the argument is that code is open source and anyone can access it. And why are you kind of shutting down something that is sort of just out there in the public domain for anyone to use, good or bad? It's like kind of the equivalent of shutting down something like TCP/IP, like the basis of the internet kind of thing. So yeah, obviously caused a massive outcry in crypto, and then the response to it was very fast. GitHub complied very quickly, so the code got removed from there within a few hours. Circle froze about $75,000 worth of USDC, so people that had just deposits on there basically have lost their money. There was this bizarre stunt where someone started withdrawing increments of 0.1 ETH, which is the minimum you could deposit, to different addresses of famous people in crypto. So it showed Vitalik Buterin receiving 0.1 ETH, or Beeple, or Steve Aoki, all these people with public addresses. And so there's a question of what it means to them. You had people coming out to criticize it. You had Vitalik commenting on how he'd used it to donate to Ukraine. DYDX also complied, and then it's kind of escalated over the course of the week until it surfaced today that Netherlands crime agency, I forget the exact name of the team, they announced this morning that they arrested what they described as a suspected developer of Tornado Cash on Wednesday. So it's like they went into Amsterdam city centre and just arrested this 29-year-old guy. And when you read the PR, I've got it open here. So it says he is suspected of involvement in concealing criminal financial flows and facilitating money laundering through the mixing of cryptocurrencies. And then it goes on to say multiple arrests are not ruled out. So it's like they're sort of pinning the blame on this guy for a handful of crimes that have occurred on Tornado. Don't get me wrong, that there have been, several criminals have used this, right? And it's often turned to following these DeFi hacks. But it does sort of raise a question. A lot of people are asking today, okay, are we going to arrest Tim Berners-Lee because, the internet has been used for crimes, or are we gonna go after like utensil companies because they make knives, and some people use knives to cut up fish and others go out and stab people. So yeah, it's quite like a dark turn, I guess, for a lot of people. And there are questions over what the next step beyond this is. I think a lot of it boils down to the right to privacy, because that's essentially what Tornado enables. And yeah, it's a question of like now, as of this news today, it's like developers and how safe they are for building these things. Because if it's not, it might not just be Tornado, right? I've always said that Satoshi, right, was smart to stay pseudonymous, because they probably would have gone after whoever that was at some point and maybe pinned something like Silk Road on them. Maybe that's, you could argue, a bit of a tinfoil hat theory, but to me it doesn't seem that far off that maybe it could be someone that, I don't know, runs a decentralized exchange next or something like this. So I think there's a lot of, I guess, anxiety and worry around this about what the future may hold for DeFi and how teams respond to this. And a lot of it boils down to like regulation in the US, but then we have this Netherlands crime agency, FIOD, sort of going after the guy as well. And they say they've been investigating it since June 2022, presumably in contact with the Treasury. So yeah, there's a lot to think about here, and a lot of unknowns, I guess. Eventful week.
Yeah, no kidding. Thanks, Christian. Obviously, this is just an incredibly fraught topic. There are so many implications to these sanctions that, just the first of which are various arrests happening. Obviously, every I think it was the Tornado Cash Discord server was shut down this morning, among other communications channels we've been using. Circle was one of the first companies, followed suit by a number of others, to immediately comply with the sanctions from the Treasury Department, which included in basically freezing some, I think, $75,000 in USDC that's currently in Tornado Cash. So there's a question of what is going to become of that. And this dusting spree, my God, this guy who just drops Tornado ETH in all of these notable wallets. So I covered this earlier this week, and I had to do a little bit of reading on Treasury Department regulations on because I was trying to figure out what are these people, if you have Tornado Cash ETH dropped in your wallet post Monday, what do you do about it? And check this out, guys. There's the questionnaire, how do I block digital currency? Once a U.S. person determines that they hold virtual currency that is required to be blocked by OFAC's regulation, the U.S. person must deny all parties access to that virtual currency and ensure they comply with OFAC regulations related to the holding and reporting of blocked assets, which includes reporting to the OFAC within 10 days that you received this currency, and implement controls that align with a risk-based approach. It goes on to say that a U.S. virtual currency company that maintains multiple virtual currency wallets in which a blocked person has an interest may choose to block each virtual currency wallet or opt to consolidate the wallets that contain blocked virtual currencies. Each are consistent. So how I'm reading this, and I've linked to this in the article. We'll put it in the channel. Seems to be that these wallets need to be frozen, or at least not interacted with, or at least like the onus appears to be on the holder of these currencies that are now, I guess, more or less tainted by having been immediately pulled out of Tornado Cash. The responsibility seems to be on the receiving party to both report and not touch that money. Now, I'm going to open it up to the table. How far back can you trace ETH? Like to use an imperfect analogy, they say that every dollar bill has a small amount of cocaine on it at some point, right? The idea being that every unit of currency has flown through an illegal transaction at some point in its lifetime. Is this a concern for you guys? I want to open the discussion up here and talk about these implications, because are we worried that the entire economic ecosystem of Ethereum could be at risk here? Yes, Tom, jump on in. I know it's a tough question.
Yeah, I was thinking, I have no idea how to answer that. but
it's just what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I think I feel particularly uneducated about any of the topics, all the subsections of this topic that we're talking about. I feel like there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but it seems to me, just from a very ignorant perspective, that that it's unenforceable. The guidelines, the regulations for sanctions, makes sense when you're dealing with entities, whether it's countries or whether it's countries or companies or something like that. But the fact that one of the after effects of blocking a piece of software that is usable by people is that one of the consequences is that you get these weird legal things where all of a sudden people like Jimmy Fallon have to contact, who is it that we've got to contact, the US Treasury to say
foreign assets control.
Yeah. Because they received 0.1 ETH, and it doesn't feel enforceable, sustainably enforceable, long term, and it doesn't feel like something that will be able to. It feels like a problem that the industry is gonna press lawmakers about. So the dusting thing in itself is complicated, but all of this, it's not just that. From my understanding, it's not just new people who now interact with Tornado Cash are put into on the sanctions list. It's if you've interacted with Tornado Cash before, it looks like they consider you broke the law retroactively because there were no sanctions against it before, but you'll still get your wallet frozen and everything like that. So I have a hard time seeing how it's gonna play out, but it doesn't seem like it's gonna be able to stay. The rules can't stay the way they are right now.
Right. I think I'm not a constitutional scholar, and it's been a while since I've read it, but I think there's something in there about not being able to prosecute someone for committing something, for performing an act that wasn't a crime at the time they performed it. Like, you can't retroactively prosecute someone for that. But that's not to say that you can't, freeze the wallet or, impose some other consequence. And it's not like, there's a mechanism for freezing the wallet that the government has. It would just be a matter of, so for example, if you just didn't know that you were supposed to not manipulate or move or transact with these assets after they've been received in your wallet, and you, just, I don't know, transfer it to another wallet or did something innocuous with it, are you on the hook for having done that? One other thing that I think is worth pointing out is the definitions that Treasury gives on the OFAC section or a website. It says that the OFAC publishes lists of individuals and companies owned or controlled by or acting for on behalf of targeted countries. It also lists individuals, groups, and entities, such as terrorists and narcotics traffickers designated under programs that are not country specific. Individuals, groups, and entities. That seems like a pretty broad catch-all term. So let's talk a little bit about interacting with the software. Like, is there anything wrong with that? And maybe let me phrase it this way. Do you think it has something to do with the specific utility that Tornado Cash was designed to implement, i.e., obfuscate the trail of money that got it into trouble? So in the example of Tim Berners-Lee, like, could you prosecute somebody for enabling the internet? But, the internet has all kinds of applications. This one is specifically designed to do something that can be interpreted as nefarious. And what do you think?
I think, I was going to defer to Mitchell because he on my, he's going to say vastly more insightful than me, but I'll speak quickly. Yeah, I was thinking about things like Photoshop, and I look at what that gets used for. All things good and bad, doesn't it? And there's an example of software that's, I suppose, with something like that, it's that why does Tornado Cash exist? Is it, as far as my understanding goes, since I've been part of this industry, is it's purely to hide your financial activities. Why do you want to do that? Okay, I've got a right to privacy, and there's a whole conversation around that. That's kind of ideological. But with that, if I can achieve that right to privacy, I can also protect myself from the taxman. So I can kind of understand that Tornado Cash has kind of been on their radar for some time, and I think we'll find out in the days that kind of come and follow along soon what the real aim is here. Is it to take down that system to prevent things like tax evasion, or are they genuinely just trying to shut down routes of terrorist and criminal financing and stuff like that? And I think we'll see. We'll see what happens if are there further arrests? Do these cases go to court? Do people actually end up in jail? It'd be really interesting to know why the Dutch have cooperated. Was political pressure, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's definitely a case of, like, you can compare it to other uses of software, but it's a fairly limited scope, I would argue. Like, this thing really is probably built to do things with it that I can't think of other uses for it. And I'm happy to hear of other uses, but it would seem to be kind of mostly a law of avoiding type tool more than anything else, I would say. Yeah.
Mitchell?
I was just going to say this is a little bit unprecedented in the sense that there are other law avoiding tools like torrent sharing that, if there's any legitimate use for it, typically the previous precedent has been that to defer to legitimate use, even if sometimes it is used for nefarious purposes. So that's why I find this so interesting with Tornado Caches. It's also targeting the users of the platform and not just the developers. Whereas, like for Ether Delta or other services that were illegitimate, they still didn't criminalize the act of using the service.
Yeah, I think they're going to make the case that, or the government's going to make the case that Tornado Cash is specifically for money laundering. I think that's how they view it. I think they're going to see from the perspective Ant outlined, which you're unmuted, Ant. You have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's making me think. Actually, in the UK, a couple of years ago, we had an issue about identity cards. It's kind of like people say, "I don't want an identity card," and the argument for it is a privacy thing, and the other side of the argument is, "Well, what's your problem? Like, what have you got to hide? Why don't you want people knowing who you are?" It kind of like you get that kind of it's an implied guilt, isn't it? Almost. So that's just thinking of that as an analogy as well.
Christian?
Yeah, I would just add as well. They did kind of specifically say in the press release. So I've got it here. Today, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's OFAC sanctioned virtual currency mixer Tornado Cash, which has been used to launder more than $7 billion worth of virtual currency since its creation. So yeah, they're very much presenting it as if anyone who's used it is using it for potentially illicit purposes. That's how I read it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they also came down specifically on Tornado Cash, precisely because it is a favorite tool of, for example, Lazarus Group, and this idea that they could sell it. And Christian mentioned the sort of mistweet from Anthony Blinken that implied outright stated that Tornado Cash was an entity owned and operated by the North Korean government, and then quickly took it down when presumably somebody behind the scenes said, "No, that's not how this works." Any other thoughts on this? Navesh, I haven't heard from you in your take on the Tornado Cash sanctions. Do you have any hot takes that haven't been brought up yet?
No, not exactly. I would just say that.
Sorry, that was the fair question, wasn't it?
No, I was just going to add that, if they are going to charge everyone, then not everyone is doing terrorist activities, but the IRS might be involved with this, and they might charge them with tax evasion. So that seems possible, but yeah, if they start rolling out subpoenas to thousands of people at once, there's going to be some pushback as well, right? And
Right.
and this is just the US that at least I am imagining right now, but they'll have to coordinate with so many regulators all around the world and so many exchanges. So yeah, I think coming back to what Tom said in the beginning, it's going to be very difficult to enforce. And if probably anyone who can, I think it's the IRS, which can just send out penalties and something that can be implemented at least. But giving them making all of them stand in front of a jury for criminal proceedings, I don't know. I don't see that happening, but who knows?
Well, I mean, there's a question of resources involved, right? Like, there's time and money and manpower that goes into organizing a jury trial, and to do this for thousands and thousands of people just for interacting with the protocol, largely, which at the time most people that interacted with Tornado Cash, it wasn't banned until Monday. So, and even people who continue, people who continue to get after Monday, I can't speak for. They might get in real trouble. Yes, I think the IRS is probably the the punitive body that's going to get involved more than anybody. All right, we've kind of gone for a while on the definitive cash sanctions. We could probably do the whole hour on it, but we won't do that. Obviously, just massive implications for the space. This is not over. There's going to be a lot more that develops out of this, and probably, I would think, set some serious precedent. Oh, one last thing. I saw I don't know if anyone else saw this. Apparently the Tornado Cash community is discussing what their legal options are in the United States. I saw this morning before the call. It is possible to get yourself removed from the sanctions list. In fact, there's a little disclaimer on the site that says, the point of the sanctions list is not to punish, but to encourage good behavior, right? So there is conceivably a way that the DAO could present itself in some sort of appeal to the sanctions, but whether or not that would ultimately be successful, who's to say? Any last thoughts on this subject before we move on to more optimistic news?
Yeah, I would just say, although the GitHub page got deleted, in crypto, whenever there's something successful, several copycats emerge, and I don't think Tornado will be like the last sort of mixer that does this thing and helps people sort of preserve their privacy. Maybe it's a team of anon developers. I think we'll see more anon teams. If this 29-year-old is, incarcerated and they say that he'd go to prison for 20 years or whatever, maybe they will. They did it to Silver Road guy, although admittedly different circumstances, but it's kind of similar. I think we'll see more like anon teams coming out, and I think it probably also highlights the need for just like privacy tech in general beyond just like mixers. There are pretty notable developments in the zero knowledge space at the moment, and various teams are working on that. There are ways you can use zero knowledge proofs to kind of like transact more privately, and maybe that's going to be something that emerges, probably not this year, but in a couple of years, and that could even be a catalyst for the next kind of round that we're all hoping for at some point as well.
Thanks, Christian. Any last closing thoughts, you guys?
I was just going to ask about USDC and all of this and MakerDAO and stuff like that, but maybe that's a bit too much to talk about at the moment.
I don't think so, Tom. You reported on this yesterday. It took us a minute to sort out what was going on, but basically the ploy is you take it from here. The ploy is to trade the treasury reserves in USDC for ETH. Is that right? Or at least that's the idea.
Yeah, so obviously Circle, which issues USDC, froze a few of the Ethereum addresses froze the USDC and some of the Ethereum addresses that were named by the Treasury in the sanctioned addresses related to Tornado Cash. And this kind of poses a big threat to, all of a sudden everyone's got to rethink their USDC positions because MakerDAO, Rin Christensen, the founder of MakerDAO, yesterday was talking on Discord and in the MakerDAO office hours that essentially MakerDAO runs the risk of one day, for one reason or another, finding its USDC blacklisted. And that would be a huge problem for MakerDAO because USDC accounts for 32% of its treasury reserves, which is the amount is $3.5 billion at the moment. So So Christensen was arguing that the protocol had to get away from its USDC reserve fast, and was looking at different options. We'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I think the ramifications are huge on this, because even if Circle's CEO Jeremy Allaire, he came out against the sanctions. He said that crypto industry leaders and lawmakers and regulators and everyone should work together to have a better framework around policy, so that and privacy, so that sanctions against illegal cash and other similar protocols cannot happen like this. But at the same time, Circle is obligated by law to freeze whatever the Treasury designed as sanction, right? So that any large USDC holder, MakerDAO is not the only one, runs a huge risk, and I think I don't know how it's going to go, but I think it's going to shift a lot of up till now, there's been a lot of talk about things need to be decentralized and everything like that, as an ideal. But for some protocols right now, it's going to become a lot more of a existential question than just it would be optimal for us to be decentralized just in case something happens. They're going to need to be optimized to be able to survive, to be decentralized to be able to survive.
Nice, Tom. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. I kind of had, the way I looked at it was that US still Circle were effectively the enforcers in a way, because they were kind of blacklisting people, and stuff like that. So that whole question about how would this sanction be enforced anyway, it's kind of interesting that there was that mechanism where it could happen through a crypto company. And it just looked for a while like Circle were the bad guys all of a sudden. But then it seems like that might have possibly been brushed under the carpet, because people have realised that Circle's too big to kind of do that to, or something, almost in a can't live with them, can't live without them kind of fashion. So yeah, that was my angle of interest.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks, man. Thoughts on this before we move on to Ethereum? All right, cool. So the other big news this week is more of a development than any, particularly revelatory moment. Well, I guess it depends on your perspective. There were as you guys are all aware, with each passing day, the fabled Ethereum merge draws nearer and seems to draw or become more set in stone in terms of both confidence that it's going to go forward without a hitch, or hopefully we'll go forward without any problem, and also that it has a specific date. As close to it's on the calendar. It has been speculated for September beforehand for a few weeks, but now we know, or at least as close to certain knowledge that we can have, that it's scheduled for sometime between September 15th and 16th, I think. I'd have to double check the story. The final Ethereum testnet merge took place this week. I can't remember exactly which night it happened. It happened in the middle of the night, went off just fine, and the price of Ethereum responded accordingly. So I'll open this up to the group. There's obviously a few more data points here to talk about. JP Morgan, for instance, said the crypto market, or their analysts said that, whatever that's worth, said their analysts said that the market had found a floor, in part thanks to the anticipation of the forthcoming merge. So I'll open this up to the group. What about this week's news is most significant? What are the implications of it? There's also the matter of proof of work. I was going to say proof of work offshoots, but that's not exactly right. It would be the original proof of work chain continuing on, at least for an indeterminate period of time. What should we be looking for? What strikes you guys as exciting about this? Christian, I know you're our local Ethereum proponent. Is this a big moment? Like this week specifically?
Yeah, so as you said, the final testnet launched. I think that was probably kind of, it was something we were talking about in the lead up, and I remember kind of saying like, oh, it's probably going to be a successful launch and ETH is probably going to benefit from that, and that's what happened. It was one of those situations where you're kind of like handed an opportunity, like an easy trade to take, and it's just like, they're just so obvious, but you know, people often don't take it, and it's often like easy to set out. But it was one of those, right? Like, there's no reason to doubt that this was sort of going to happen, and yeah, it did. And then the next day, so yesterday, Thursday, they held the consensus layer call, like Ethereum developers, and on that, seemingly settled on a launch that would end up around September 15 or 16. So yeah, it's like, what more confirmation do you want, right? It's obviously going to happen next month, barring any issues. And yeah, we've seen ETH rally. Whether that's sustained, I don't know. I think it's pretty likely to go higher than it is now, kind of in the lead up to this event. I think there will be a huge buzz on the week that it happens. Like I say, not necessarily a week or 2 week or a month or 2 months after. It's more of like a long-term thing. Issuance dropping 90%, that's major, but it's like, not like it just, you know, suddenly the switch happens and it's like, oh my god, ETH is just such a special asset to hold, it must be worth $10,000. It doesn't really work like that. It's like, you know, the market will respond, but it might take some time. I think it is striking that this is kind of, like JP Morgan said, is very much leading things. We also saw this week that BlackRock announced a private Bitcoin fund, and it's like quite notable news. Like, BlackRock is, you know, the biggest asset manager in the world, and they're giving like a lot of people access, institutional investors, exposure to, you know, Bitcoin for the first time. But I think that almost just got lost in the sea of other interest in like the ETH narrative, and that it's like really the merge that is like taking the spotlight at the moment. And you know, you have the real big fans who are saying that this means that ETH can potentially flip Bitcoin at some point, but they say that every year, so who knows if that's true. It's just interesting. I just wonder if it can last, you know, another, once the merge actually happens, or is this going to be a kind of sell the new thing? But you know, in terms of like the improvements to obviously like energy consumption and not having to pay miners is pretty big. And then the whole proof of work thing is a whole nother question.
Right, and we're going to get into both of them. Thanks, Christian. We'll start with what markets are going to do. Notably, Vitalik Buterin said in an interview recently that he felt that the merge is not yet priced in, that people weren't going to get excited about that narrative until it actually happened. And I mentioned that concurrently with the JP Morgan analysis that crypto is, you know, quote, found a floor. I'd like to get Nathan's view on this. I know we normally start with talking about Bitcoin, Nathan, but this week ETH is leading the way. How do you see? I mean, we all saw the markets react this week to the testnet merge news. So, what are you thinking about in the weeks going forward?
Weeks going forward for Ethereum, I think it can definitely go towards a minimum of $2,200 I've got on my price chart. I'm a bit, I'll be honest with you, I'm probably going to book a meeting with Anton, head of research at Simtree, because I think he's got some quite bearish views on the merge, and he doesn't think it's from what I understand, he doesn't think it's a significant event, and this could be something that the market is getting way too excited about, as it's not really that much of a game changer. I have to get into more detail with Anton about it. So I'm a bit suspicious, but Ethereum at the moment, I'll be honest with you, I'm not looking to predict anything beyond 2,200. I think if I'm trying to correlate with what with where I think Bitcoin can go, and obviously Ethereum is like front running Bitcoin at the moment in terms of price gains, then if I think that Bitcoin is going to 26,000, which I strongly think it does, then probably 2,200 sounds a bit low. So maybe I'm very conservative in where I think it could go to. I think the options market, as I understand it, the highest amount that the market is really looking for, I mean, like where all the money is stacked is around 2,400 in terms of the strike price in September. But there is, interestingly, there is also an awful lot of money, around $4,000 that have been placed in the options market. So I could be underestimating the event, but I have to speak to Anton, to be honest with you. So for me, say upcoming price forecast 2,224, and I'm not really willing to look beyond that on the chart. It's definitely indicated to go to that sort of area.
Cool. Thanks, Nathan. Navesh, I'd also, it's been a minute since we've heard from you. I'd like to get your thoughts on the merge going forward. Specifically, maybe you can tell us a little bit about this balance between the optimism and, this narrative that people are getting too excited. Do you think that's fair?
I mean, there is certainly reason to be excited, because even let's say the issuance thing is gonna take some time, but the fact that it's going energy friendly is important, because we have seen a lot of instances where the climate issue becomes really important, and there are actions taken against it, and Bitcoin has come under the radar for a lot of times. It has been able to prove somehow that it can be used as an energy battery, as in you can tap renewable resources to mine Bitcoin, and that use that money to let's say buy renewable resources, non-renewable resources, or you can use that money for growing the economy and things like that. But or even growing the plant bigger so that it can facilitate an entire city or an entire town. But yeah, regardless of that, a computer network like Ethereum making its way with proof of work was going to be difficult, and we saw that it could, the gas fees rose, but what we are seeing that it needs a lot of resources, and if we can take out the the energy point of view from it, then it makes a lot of sense, and I think it will be a huge win for Ethereum. And even because institutions might not be willing to buy Ethereum because of how much energy it wastes, or how much because of its carbon footprint. But after this is solved, then some of the institutions, even maybe BlackRock, every company starts with Bitcoin, so it has just started dipping its toes. But the next one is going to be Ethereum, and this time they will have lesser concerns than Bitcoin to add Ethereum. Maybe a bit like on the other side related to market manipulation or whole like the difference between small holders and large holders and things like that. But regarding the technology and how it's used and what it leaves behind, there's gonna be no problem, right? So it is a big issue. We should be excited about it, but yeah, getting too excited at like within a small period of time often results in hype and a lot of volatility in prices. So I think we can draw a lot of parallelism to Bitcoin mining. I like the last time I don't know how much of a it was a very big I shouldn't say I don't know, but it was a very big deal when Bitcoin reduced its issuance last time. And yeah, I think Bitcoin was trading around $10,000 below that, and there was a lot of optimism that like just because of mining, Bitcoin is going to go back above 10,000 and regain its previous peak of $20,000 and whatnot. And it was all over the news. You could see Google trend searches for Bitcoin had risen, and everyone was talking about halvening. It something sounded like they were giving extra dividends, and it was all for free. But it takes time. Like they're not reducing the supply; they are reducing the issuance. So and there is a lot of hype around the market. Some people are just buying because of the merge. They're not buying it because they want to hold it long term or they want to use it. So it makes sense. Like if there is a lot of smoke, it has to come down, right? And I think that's probably why Anton is also bearish on the merge. Maybe he has some technical concerns that I might not know about, but yeah, this thing, like as the euphoria grows, the more concerned we should become as investors. It's like everyone is talking about it. It's going to go to 10K. It's going to go to 15K. Maybe, probably, yes, but will it happen on 15th of September and you are betting a lot of money on it? Then I would say that's like the worst case of risk management.
Thanks, Anesh. I think that actually dovetails nicely into the last topic I want to make sure we address today as we bring it into the home stretch. That is the idea of the proof of work change, or rather the remnants of the Ethereum proof of work chain, because I know people are learning about this because people have asked me, what's going to happen to the Ethereum miners, all these people who have invested all of this money in these mining rigs. There's been, some support among the Ethereum mining community to kind of keep this chain going. And I forgot, I think, Christian, you might have to remind me. I think it was Binance, but I'm not sure that, it was Justin Sun's.
It was Poloniex, which is backed by Justin Sun, but Binance put out an update saying we'll support the merge, but we'll assess any potential tokens. And there are also some exchanges that are listing like futures and that kind of thing, like BitMEX.
Yeah. So this sort of idea that there could be an ETHW token that sort of survives. Last week, before I open it up to the group, I'll just say that last week I was lucky enough to be a part of a press conference with Vitalik, and he addressed this issue. And his response about the idea that, because it was the first question he was asked, what do you think about the possibility of two Ethereum chains? And he compared it immediately to the aftermath of the DAO hack and the fork that resulted in Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And his argument was he didn't see that happening this time, because at the time of the DAO hack, there was a real ideological idea that you don't tamper, you don't reset the blockchain, it's just not done. What's done is done, and it needs to be immutable. So there was like real ideological support for keeping the chain the way it was. This time around, it seems to be that maybe not the entire community, but the vast majority I'm seeing is more or less on board with the proof of stake, with the new proof of stake chain. It will support that in many cases exclusively. Do you guys see ETH proof of work continuing on in any form, in any significant? We were talking a little bit about this before the show, so we'll revisit some of these ideas. But is this viable, or is ETH work doomed? Tom, what do you think?
I think the big difference between, like, Vitalik's right, there's like a huge ideological difference, but there's also the fact that now Ethereum's got DeFi applications, it's got stablecoins, it's got NFTs and everything now. And both Ether and Circle have said that they would support the proof of stake chain, the merged Ethereum chain. So there's not going to be the same kind of, like, those ecosystems cannot survive without, like, currently they cannot survive without Ether and USDC. So it kind of sounds like any future Ethereum forks are going to be decided more by stablecoins. This one, it seems to me, is good. Like, it cannot survive long term without having USDC or USDT on it. But I do think, on the other hand, I do think that, like, it might stick around for longer than people expect, because there's some interesting questions that arise from it. Like, people get if you're a CryptoPunk holder, you've got two of them. Same with your Bored Ape. It'll be interesting to see how, like, the DeFi ecosystem, like, if some applications, like, on the Ethereum proof of work chain, like, still survive without the centralized coins or not. I think it's mainly like a trade idea, and it's not a stupid trade idea, but I don't think the project has legs long term.
Thanks, Tom. Navesh, I saw you unmute for a second. Would you like to add something?
Yeah. Sorry for the excitement. I just wrote a newsletter about it yesterday. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
I just wanted to say that it's very much viable. Like the point which Tom raised, that it's not going to have stable coins, so it's not going to have money. It's not going to be valuable. It makes sense when you have used Ethereum and when you know how it all works. But just think about it from a larger perspective. Think about chains like Cardano or Polkadot, or I don't want to, like, name anymore, but yeah, even Tron, like, it did not have stable coins until a very long time, and like, even without usage, they'd have a lot of volume, trading volume, and market cap itself. So we should just treat it as another chain, and right now it has Ethereum miners who are willing to run the chain. And I see one prominent guy in Justin Sun who has the ability to spin up applications on it quite fast. So we are just assuming that it's not an assumption as much as a near certainty that the top tier tabs applications like Aave or Uniswap are not going to support the proof of work chain. But it doesn't mean that something like maybe Abracadabra or I would say even MakerDAO, not MakerDAO, but like the governance team of small ecosystems, maybe Frax, they make an attempt to grow their ecosystem or bring themselves into the light and make people know the importance of decentralization and whatnot. It's going to be a lot of shebang, but it's possible that these developers still stick to this chain because they don't have to do a lot of work. The thing already exists, and if by some promotion they can gain value out of it, why not? Not everyone is ethical, and yeah, so I would say that it's going to run for a while, and like the fact that it's getting so much air right now, and God forbid that another a few leaders of the ecosystem they join the chain and they join the bandwagon and they are like, yeah, I'm supporting these guys as well. So this fire will go on for a while, but yeah, in the long term, like the robustness of the Ethereum ecosystem, I don't think that the proof of work chain will be able to reach that. It's just a matter of how much value the market perceives it has. I was thinking more of 5% of Ethereum's value, but we have seen with Bitcoin Cash it went up to around 30%. And so if the market's interest rises and maybe there is a rumor that this is not sustainable or this is not going to work, and a section of the society goes on buying, because we don't see that right now, but in the past we have also seen one Korean exchange like BitHum amping up the volume and the price, and people don't know what's going on. It's just on that exchange, and that kind of reverberates or sends a ripple effect around the entire market. So anything can happen, and this 2 weeks we are going to see a lot of volatility, and like people who believe in Cardano or Ripple, they are going to believe that okay, this is cheaper Ethereum. If maybe they have a crooked mind as well about it. It's like if we support it and if we get a lot of people, everybody else to support it, I'd have a lot of Ethereum and it will be worth $1,000 in the future. So these kind of things just I don't think it's avoidable. So I think that it's like the chain sentiment wise it's going to live for a while, but yeah, in terms of usage and other things, not so much.
Right. Thanks, Nivesh. Lots of differing perspectives here. I like it. We are coming up on the end of the hour. Do you have any closing thoughts before we go into the weekend? Any? I mean, we normally close with thoughts on the market, but we kind of covered that already. Any closing remarks, you guys? I'll close. How about we close? Oh, Mitchell.
I hope Ethereum proof of work doesn't become a thing as a separate chain. That'd kind of be tragic.
You cut off for a second. You hope it doesn't become a thing?
Yeah, I just, unlike Bitcoin Cash, I don't see a compelling argument for why it should continue existing.
I don't either. For the sake of the miners, I guess. I don't know. That may be too cynical. Any other thoughts, guys? Yeah, Ant?
Yeah, I think for me, the whole thing about the from NFT's point of view, like questioning which is the original NFT, if you have a copy of it on proof of work and copy on proof of stake, is kind of like a interesting and like impossible to answer kind of like problem. And yeah, I think it's just as long as the macro environment continues to be good, then maybe all the stars are aligned for a continued ETH pump. And other than that, I would just, if they're not aligned, then I would just be really careful of a big market dump at around about the time of the merge, or maybe just sort of just before, just after.
All right, be careful out there. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. As always, it's been a pleasure to speak with all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and everyone take care.